ahead and start the meeting recording.
We are good to proceed.
Thank you. Right, Mayor, you want to call us to order?
Yeah, let's go ahead and call it to order. Start on the consent agenda.
Okay. Thank you. So, welcome to the May 4th City Council meeting. This is also, as we did in April, this is being brought to us via WebEx video conferencing. We do have all the mayor and council, as well as several department heads and some special guests that will present during the regular agenda. So for the workshop, I will go over the consent agenda items, and then you can ask any questions, or if there are any items that you want to pull onto the regular agenda, we can do that. When I'm finished with the consent agenda discussions, then we can begin the regular meeting. So I am going to attempt to do a PowerPoint, and would you please let me know if you can see the PowerPoint? No. Okay.
No.
Let me try. Oh, I forgot to do the share content.
Well, there you go.
So,
Yeah.
There. Yep.
can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So we have 6 items on the consent agenda tonight. The first 2 are minutes from previous meetings. Item 1 is approval of your minutes from the regular meeting on April the 6th. And item 2 is approval of the special meeting minutes from April the 20th. And that was our budget workshop, as well as several other items. Item 3 is a follow-up from the last meeting, as well as the special meeting. And this is an offer to purchase city-owned property. This is the property that a portion of it that is being used for parking, as well as it's being leased from the city by the adjacent property owner, 111 Investments LLC. And it is being used as an outdoor patio dining space. The offer is from 111 Investments LLC, which, as I mentioned, is from the adjacent property owner. They want to purchase approximately 0.04 acres, or 4/100ths of an acre, of our property. Our total property is 14/100ths of an acre. So they want to purchase approximately 1/3 of our property. The total tax value of our property is $91,440. So this is approximately 1/3 of the overall land. So the tax value of this is approximately $25,000. The purchase offer is $75,000. So it does exceed the tax value of the property. You did make a tentative acceptance of the offer at your workshop on April the 20th, and that authorized the upset bid process that is outlined in the general statutes. So we did advertise that for 10 days in the newspaper. That 10-day period ended on May the 2nd, and we did not receive any additional offers. So we have the final offer of $75,000. So we do recommend that you accept that offer and authorize the city manager and city attorney to close on that transaction. As we mentioned previously, there is a proposed development on adjacent properties to the south and west. Selling this piece of property will not adversely impact that potential development. It also would not adversely impact the city parking lot as far as the number of parking spaces. We would lose 2 parking spaces by this transaction, but we would gain them back and then some on the proposed development next door. And we also have some room, if that development does not occur, we can add those spaces in this parking lot so that we make sure we still have at least one ADA compliant parking space in this location. The next item, item 4 on the consent agenda, is an adoption of a resolution to support the Carolina Thread Trail grant for the Abbey Creek Greenway project. As you know, the Abbey Creek Greenway is approximately a 1-mile long greenway that the city has been discussing for many, many years. It runs along Abbey Creek, basically in the city's utility easement along Abbey Creek from pretty much Walgreens on Park Street, along Abbey Creek to 6th Street, and then over toward the Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park. As you'll recall, as part of the development of the Morris at Belmont project that was approved last summer, the developers will construct half of this Greenway for us at their expense. And so we need to be prepared to construct the other half so that it's one continuous project. Our portion is outlined in this red oval, and it essentially runs from 6th Street to Catawba Street with the trailhead there at the river, across the street from the Riverfront Park, with a little connector to the Gaston College Kimbrell campus. So the grant that we would like to apply for with your support tonight is for up to $30,000 for design services so that we can proceed with the design and engineering of our portion of the Greenway so that we can then be prepared to construct it along the same timeline as the other half, which will be done privately. So again, this project will be done basically half by private development and half by the public dollars. So the only action for tonight is the resolution of support authorizing us to apply for the grant. And this particular grant does not require a match. Item 5 on the consent agenda is approval of an amendment to your capital project ordinance for the Public Works Renovation project, what we're now calling our City Works building project. And this is because we anticipated the construction of this project to be completed in January of this year. Have $250,000 in the general fund budget for furniture, fixtures, and equipment that we would then spend this spring, anticipating being in, or I guess over the winter, anticipating being in this building. Since we're not going to be in the building by the end of the fiscal year, most likely, we want to have flexibility to use this money for this project. So even if by having it in the project ordinance, it can transcend a fiscal year. If we don't do this and the project's not completed and we can't spend the money on furniture, fixtures, and equipment by the end of June, then this money would just roll into the fund balance, and we'd have to appropriate money out of next year's budget. So to avoid all of that, we're asking that you take the money out of the general fund in this year's budget and put it in the project ordinance for the Public Works or City Works building project. That way we can purchase the furniture, fixtures, and equipment at the appropriate time. And the final item on the consent agenda is a proposed change in the job description and job duties and the salary grade for our IT services coordinator. That position is currently filled by Seth Norkett. That position was created in the current year's budget as essentially a way to have somebody there to coordinate all the various IT consultants that we use and the different IT service providers, and primarily to help us implement the WaterSmart feature of our automated meter reading system, and to work with our consultant that we have for that project, which I believe is MeterSys. As you all know, this role has certainly included a lot more work than just coordinating with consultants. Seth has done a great job, and he's greatly exceeded the role and has grown this role. So we want to change his job description and job title and certainly the salary grade to actually reflect the work that he's doing, not just what he's supposed to, because he's doing a lot more work than what his job description requires. So we have a proposal to change the IT services coordinator position to an information technology specialist description. So the job description is beginning on page 28 of your packet. That would move that position from a grade 14 to a grade 18. So there would be a salary increase. But again, he is doing more than what we asked him to do, and he's done a great job. And frankly, we could not have transitioned to this remote world that we've been in the last 6 or 7 weeks without the work that he's done. So again, this is for the position, not the person. So even if Seth left us tomorrow, we want to make sure that we've got a position that covers all the duties that we are now requiring in our increasingly technological world.
Okay.
So those are the 6 items on the consent agenda. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have one.
Yes.
I would assume that at the appropriate time, when we can distribute any minutes of the closed session we had last month, we'll do that. And obviously, that can't be done remotely, because I was wondering where those were.
Yes, we had them on the agenda and then realized we can't just email those out. We want to maintain chain of custody of those minutes. So we are crossing our fingers and hoping that we can meet in person in some form or fashion at the June meeting. So the closed session minutes from the last meeting will be handed out at the next time that you can meet in person.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Well, that concludes the consent agenda. That's a good thing. And are we at a point now where we can start the regular meeting? It's almost.
Yes, sir. We finished the work session, so you can go ahead and open and call the regular meeting to order.
I will call a regular meeting to order. All those in favor? Calling the meeting to order.
Yeah, it's
It's your call.
called.
Well, let's call it to order then. All right.
All right.
And I'll do the invocation. And Jim's going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll get ready to get started, okay?
Okay.
So we ask you, Heavenly Father, pray for us to make the right decisions for the city. Keep us humble. Keep us aware that there's a lot of stuff that's going on today that has been very difficult for so many people. But we pray that you help us get through this time. And we ask your guidance. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. Is motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Consent agenda is approved. Okay. Jim, you going to take it for the regular?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And again, as Mayor Pro Tem, I'll be running this remote meeting based on my familiarity with the WebEx software platform. So with that said, and the consent agenda having been approved, we will go into public comment. I understand that there is one public comment, and based on our policy, again, citizens were invited to submit public comments by email, and Adrian will be reading the comment received.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. We received one comment for public comment tonight, and I will read that. I did forward that to you once the public comment period had closed. So I will read that now. And this is from Carrie Roberts at 9 Park Drive in Belmont. I have been a Belmont resident now for almost 20 years and own 2 small businesses here in town. For quite some time, I have had serious concerns about the use of tax dollars in Belmont, North Carolina. I know I speak for many taxpayers when I express my frustration regarding last year's tax increase and the spending that appears to have correlated with it. Thousands of dollars were spent on kiosks, the most obvious frivolous purchase. And by all appearances, as our economy now rapidly declines due to fallout from COVID-19, the free spending continues. My most recent concern is a project in Davis Park with little to no planning. For some reason, 40-year-old azaleas that were a natural fit for this park were removed in early spring. While I was disappointed to see this, I didn't complain, and it appeared that grass was planted in their place, straw was put down. Fast forward to the beginning of the quarantine, and a team of city employees arrived at the park and quickly assembled new planting beds where the old azaleas had been located. With no preparation or removal of the straw, seed, etc., dump trucks arrived and loaded in dirt and mulch. When I inquired of staff what was happening, I was told they were about to plant knockout roses. I quickly called Adrian Miller and explained the predicament and indicated that roses would never survive in the full shade that this park offers. The next morning, azaleas were planting in the poorly constructed beds. It was explained to me this week that most of the supplies used in this project were things the city had on hand. But again, the appearance of the project, including 2 days of staff time for more than employees, was that while residents were being forced to close their businesses and the unemployment rate was quickly rising, the city had ample funds to continue frivolous spending. I witnessed a city employee returning one time after the planting to water these plants. As they wilted and struggled, my children watered them an additional 2 times to keep them from dying. This past Friday, I went outside to find the azaleas had been ripped from the ground. Soon, 2 trucks and 3 more city employees arrived with hostas and daylilies in tiny 4-inch pots and said they were there to redo the planting beds. I immediately began contacting city council and staff to make them aware of my shared frustration and this appearance of frivolous spending. Most city council members have since visited the site and/or contacted me to get my take on the project. City employee David Eisenhower also came by to discuss and indicated that the city would now bring an arborist or even an outside landscape company to consult on these beds. In a time when many of our businesses are trying to feed their families due to job losses, it appears our city is focused on ill-planned projects that are costly in materials and staff time. Landscaping that was installed earlier in the year at the entrance to the tennis courts on Park Drive has not been maintained and is currently being overtaken by weeds. It's time for our council and staff to be held accountable for the spending of our tax dollars or the appearance of spending. While I hope I'm wrong, this type of spending appears to be a microcosm of a bigger problem internally. As the council prepares to work on the budget for the upcoming year and citizens are already hearing there's a potential for taxes to remain neutral, we need a council working for the people to cut costs and decrease taxes. Additionally, and on a different note, I am asking for the immediate opening of the tennis courts on Park Drive. Much like the state of North Carolina, our city has treated Belmont with a one-size-fits-all during the COVID crisis. Tennis and pickleball are sports that do not require contact and allow for appropriate social distancing. Our taxpayers and contributors to this project deserve use of these courts for exercise and vitamin D. In Gaston County, we have had far fewer COVID cases than our neighboring Mecklenburg County, and Mecklenburg reopened courts last week. Many private courts have remained open throughout the crisis. The USTA has provided guidelines that Mecklenburg is following. Thank you for your prompt response to these issues.
Thank you, Adrian. I know we're going to discuss the parks issue during your manager's report, and so I don't know if there's any reaction to that or if we should just move on to the next agenda
Move
item.
on. I think we should
Okay.
move on. Yeah.
All right. Well, the next item on the agenda is adoption of a resolution of support for a Carolina Thread Trail grant for the Rocky Branch Park Enhancement Project. And we have several representatives from that on hand to discuss that. So I will turn it first over to Adrian to introduce the topic, and then he in turn will introduce the speakers from that group to provide further detail and answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. This is a follow-up item from the City Council's October special meeting from October of last year when a group of Tar Heel Trailblazers and Belmont residents presented a plan to make enhancements to Rocky Branch Park. The City Council, I believe, unanimously accepted the plan at the time and charged this committee with seeking private funding or grant funding to implement this project and to bring back a plan to you. And so they've been working on this since then, and they will provide an overview of the project and the fundraising efforts to date. So I will try to pull up the PowerPoint and share with you, but I would like to ask David Baker and Sarah Kaufman to lead the presentation, and they certainly have others with them that are on the WebEx that can answer questions. So with that, I will try to share my PowerPoint once again. You
And
see
it
the
looks like,
Adrian.
yes, it's working.
Okay, let me pull to that, and you see the Rocky Branch Trail enhancement?
Yeah. So I guess David and Sarah, when you need to advance a slide, just let Adrian know and he'll do it.
Sure. Great.
All right.
All right. Are you going to pull it up full screen, Adrian? Or are you going to put it in presentation mode?
I'm trying. I'm old, David.
Do not say that, Adrian. Do not tell that.
I think you can hit from the beginning and just kind of thumb through those slides. Usually down
Yeah,
or
I'm
up in
pressing
that
that
left.
button.
Oh, yeah. And it's not coming.
I don't know.
Well,
You want me-
yeah, do we want to share with David and have him, if he's got the slides?
David, do you have yours ready?
Adrian,
I do,
unclick
but
where it says use presenter view.
Excuse me?
Unclick where it says use presenter view under monitors.
Oh, there it is. You're go down.
Use presenter view that? Unclick
Yeah.
that?
I'll try it. I'll try to.
The good news is this is being broadcast on YouTube, so the whole world can watch me fumble through this.
Well,
I don't know why it's doing. I'm sure everyone watching at home is yelling at their which button I should press.
Well, they don't have other places to go, though, Adrian, so it's all right.
I don't know. David, you want to try this? If I stop
All
sharing?
let me see if I can. Where's David here? There he is. All right, David should be the presenter now. So see if you can share.
Okay. Can you see? Oh, sorry.
We can see you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
there we go. We're starting to
There
see
you
it.
go.
How about that?
All right, there we are.
All right. Great. All right. We're all ready. Everybody can see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you guys again for this opportunity tonight to present to you. Tonight we will present the Carolina Thread Trail through Rocky Branch Park and also be providing a quick status update on the entire Rocky Branch Park Trail Enhancement Project. As you know, my name is David Baker. I'm a Belmont resident and the Tar Heel Trailblazers Rocky Branch Park Committee Chairman. Presenting with me tonight is Sarah Kaufman. She's also a Belmont resident, and she is the Tar Heel Trailblazers Rocky Branch Park Committee fundraising lead. So as a reminder to you guys, the Rocky Branch Trail Enhancement Project is being led by a 7-person Tar Heel Trailblazer Committee on behalf of the City of Belmont. The committee consists of local residents, a local business owner, and members of the Tar Heel Trailblazers Executive Board, which all have a variety of professional experience. So our team includes expertise in site civil engineering, accounting and finance, public sector project management, municipal planning, trail building and maintenance, and mountain biking industry experts. It's a broad range, awesome committee. And this committee has contributed to hundreds of hours, volunteer hours, on getting this project to where it is today. It's been about a year and a half. So these hours are equal to tens of thousands of dollars in professional service benefits to the city of Belmont. And we as a committee and Tar Heel Trailblazers are committed and excited to see this project through construction. So, you know, we've been working on this 18 months, so I want you to know we're committed and we want to see this thing through and the fruits of our labor come true. So what we have up now is the approved concept plan from our October City Council meeting. And tonight we're going to be focusing on the multi-use trail through the park, which is highlighted on this map. So it's the first phase of the project, and it's going to act as a spine through the park for access and connectivity to the other trail section that we discussed. And it's also critical for future construction and emergency access. So please pay special attention to the picture that was presented in the October meeting to the left. This picture shows kind of what the concept was back in October, which was to put a 4-foot wide natural surface trail in. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. So to kind of give you a little update on what's been happening since October last year, we've made a lot of progress. Since that meeting, since we got the approval back in October, we had a fundraising kickoff party at South Main Cycles in December. We had a really good turnout from the community, got to engage, got a good kickstart on fundraising, and actually several of the council members showed up, so that was great to see you guys there and have your support. And then we actually began design and have completed design on the Carolinas Red Trail section, the green zone, and the blue zone. All that was completed in April. So we have that tonight. We're going to share with you the Carolinas Red Trail design. And then also the Carolinas Red Trail Governing Board approved the Rocky Branch Park, the multi-use trail through Rocky Branch Park as a Carolina Thread Trail section as an amendment to the Gaston County Master Plan. So we actually approved some modifications to include this. And we were on the agenda for the March Gaston County Planning Board meeting, and that got postponed, obviously due to COVID-19. We're working with Kathy Hart right now to kind of get that rescheduled. We're expecting, you know, that to occur and for that to get the final approval for the master plan amendment. Other things that have occurred more recently, we met with Gaston County Schools in the town of Cramerton to talk about their portion of the project, and we met with Adrian and Zip at the beginning of April to kind of give them an update on the status and talk about path forward. Some other things that aren't on this timeline that I'd like to highlight is we met, John Wilson and I, another committee member, met with Oscar Reed and Reverend Alexander back in October to discuss the project. For those of you who might not know, they are both members of the Reed community. Unfortunately, Reverend Alexander has passed on since then. But we do plan on having a Reed community meeting at the park this summer once the COVID-19 gathering restrictions are over. So we can have more than 10 people. We also attended 2 Tar Heel Trailblazers meetings, which we presented the latest details on the project. One was actually at South Main Cycles in February, and we had, it was open to the public, so we got a chance to engage with some new people, so that was great. And we also participated in the Community Foundation run, Gaston County Community Foundation. So Sarah will talk a little bit more about that in some of the next coming slides. All right. So next I'd like to highlight kind of the momentum and the support that we have gotten for this Carolina Thread Trail section through RVP. So as mentioned before, we did get approval from the Carolina Thread Trail Governing Board, and we are on the agenda for the Gaston County Planning Board for this to be a new amendment to the Gaston County Thread Trail Master Plan. And also, we've gained and collaborated with a bunch of local stakeholders, the City of Belmont, Gaston County Schools, Gaston County Parks and Rec, Gaston County Travel and Tourism, and the town of Cramerton. So through this coordination, it actually has been recommended from that section that I showed you earlier in the slide to increase our trail quality and scope for this multi-use path to be consistent with the minimum Carolina Thread Trail design standards. I'll tell you a little bit about how that correlates to the design. So, like I said, the design is complete, and the trail spec, the increased trail spec includes a 4 to 8 foot wide crushed gravel trail surface. It also includes bridges that will need to be built to the Carolina Thread Trail minimum standards so that they can support small construction equipment and emergency access. These trail specs, though, will extend the opportunity for trail use by making it all weather with the crushed gravel. And it will also help achieve our goals of community connectivity and an inclusive recreation space. This will promote more Main Street foot traffic and wellness in the community. And I'd like to note, actually during this time, that trail systems in Belmont are actually the only park amenities that have remained open during the pandemic. So getting a lot of publicity for Rocky Branch Park, and when we're there, we're seeing a lot more users. So that's good for the public, and we only expect it to gain momentum as we roll this project out.
David, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Is there a handrail or anything going across that stream that, I don't know how deep that stream is going to be, if it rains or whatever the case may be, will we have protection for people that are walking over that creek?
Yes, sure. Yeah. So all the bridges will have handrail. They're required to have handrail. Railing on both, safety railings on both sides with handrail.
Yes.
So we should, yep.
Good.
Exactly. And the trail spec, that 4 to 8 foot wide, kind of smooth crushed gravel. But the idea is that the maximum average grade is no more than 7%. So very walkable. And actually what I have up now, kind of give you a little more explanation, is a map of the design that we worked with Community Trail Design on. And what it's showing here is the actual pink highlighted portion is the City of Belmont portion of the trail, and the orange highlighted section is on the Stuart Kramer property, which is in the town of Cramerton. So we're kind of simultaneously working with the town of Cramerton and Gaston County Schools on their portion. We had a great meeting with them. They actually are interested and have already seeked getting a design scope to upgrade the Carolina Thread Trail all the way to Eagle Road. Our project only included connecting to the Carolina Thread Trail. So that's exciting. And they're actually talking about designating that area as a town of Cramerton Park. So very cool that we could have an inclusive joint Rocky Branch Park, part of it being in Crown of Cramerton and part of it in the City of Belmont. So I was really excited to hear that. But as far as you guys tonight, we're focused on this pink highlighted portion. This is what we're going to apply for the Carolina Thread Trail grant for this spring. I just want to note the items here that I'm pointing to, B1, B2, B3, those are required bridges. So we've got 5 of them, and this C-A is a required culvert. So that's going to be included with our design. And you can kind of see, like if you actually can look in deeper here, you can see the contours. And a lot of the trail kind of runs with the contour topography. And that's intended so that we don't have really steep hills, so that it is inclusive to a majority of the community for walking trails, you know, recreational biking, running, that type of stuff. The image to the right here is what it would look like in a typical section in a bench cut section. So on a hillside slope, we would have to cut in. We'd have a flat benched out thread trail with the crusher gravel cap, and it says on here 6 to 8 foot. So I did mention 4 to 8 foot, but 6 to 8 foot. A majority of the trail will be 6 to 8. There will be small sections we'll have to neck down to kind of avoid mature tree trunks and root balls. So there may be some small portions that are 4 feet. So now I'm actually going to turn it over to Sarah Kaufman to discuss our current funding plan.
Thanks, Dave. So you can see from what Dave just walked you through that the Carolina Thread Trail within Rocky Branch Park has great potential to have an immediate and significant positive impact on the community. So the city's financial support would then show the Carolina Thread Trail its commitment to this project's success. So the Carolina Thread Trail provides grants up to $100,000 twice a year for construction of trail. This is done in a spring and fall grant cycle. And historically, what we've seen is these grants have been awarded to projects with municipal funding and investment. So we've created a funding plan that would best take advantage of the availability of this grant opportunity while maximizing the impact of the city of Belmont's investment. The Tar Heel Trailblazers will apply for a Carolina Thread Trail Spring Grant representing 50% of the cost for the Belmont portion of the trail. That grant cycle opened today. We're asking the city of Belmont to provide matching funds, which would be estimated at $46,025. We've engaged, as Dave mentioned, with the town of Cramerton and their Parks and Recreation leadership, and we'll apply the same funding plan to construct the Cramerton portion of the Carolina Thread Trail through the fall grant cycle. Now, the Carolina Thread Trail funding is not contingent on the remaining trail plans. The Tar Heel Trailblazers and the Rocky Branch Committee will continue to lead that fundraising and the grant applications and the volunteer services to construct the beginner, intermediate, and advanced trail loops that'll connect back to this Carolina Thread Trail. So we're going to talk through a project update on the overall funding progress that we've made since we spoke with you in the fall. We have nearly $65,000 in confirmed funding from over 40 individual donors. We've received business sponsorships from Duke Energy, South Main Cycles, Atrium Health, and Feel Good Meals. We are recipients of matching funds from Microsoft and AmerisourceBergen. And as Dave mentioned, we are a Guest and Community Foundation virtual run participant, which does require a nonprofit application process to participate, and we'll receive matching funds on designated donations through that event. The amount of matching funds have not yet been announced, but are estimated at $3,500. We have pending grant applications today totaling $120,000, and these grants are with Belmont Impact Fund, the HDR Foundation, Santa Cruz Pay Dirt, and the REI Local Grant. These represent grants that we have applied for, they've been submitted, and we're awaiting funding decisions. We have future grant application opportunities that we can complete later this year that total about $100,000. This includes the North Carolina Recreational Trail Grant. The Trailblazers were actually a recipient of the 2019 award, and they're using that for enhancements at the Colonel Francis Beatty Park Trails in Mecklenburg County. Now, these totals exclude the Carolina Thread Trail grants we just discussed. Also doesn't reflect the cost of the professional services donated to the city and the park by the members of the Trailblazers and the Rocky Branch Park Committee that Dave alluded to earlier. We'll talk through the tentative project schedule. As we discussed in the fall, the project schedule aligns with funding timing. So the timing that we're showing here reflects Belmont's investment in the matching portion of the Carolina Thread Trail costs and assumes the project receiving the spring grant award. We could begin construction this fall to have trail by the end of the year. And then the Cramerton portion is scheduled to be completed shortly thereafter. The Tar Heel Trailblazers will continue to work on funding, building the progressive trail system over the next 12 to 18 months. So then, based on this plan that we've just discussed and the benefits we feel it provides the city's residents, businesses, and the surrounding region. Our ask tonight is that the City Council approve supporting the Carolina Thread Trail Implementation Grant application for the Rocky Branch Park, which will be submitted by the Tar Heel Trailblazers. So we welcome your questions at this time and appreciate your attention.
Thank you, Sarah. Let's see. I guess we'll just go down the row. Ryan, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't think I have any questions. It looks good to me. I'm on the Carolina Thread Trail probably 2 or 3 times a week, and they have certainly been fuller here over the last 5 or 6 weeks. But even without the COVID-19, they're very popular. And I always comment when I'm down at the Seven Oaks Trail how you can kind of walk off the McLean property and get on the trail. And I think based on what we approved tonight in the consent agenda, it looks like we'll be able to connect Adams Bluff and some of those neighborhoods to the trail, and then connecting Eagle Park and Stuart Kramer School and the Rocky Branch Trail. And ultimately, if we can do the Greenway going across over to 85, I think the project is I think it'll be a great project because a lot of people will be able to access it at different points and take it in different directions. And I think the ask here, just in my experience with the parks, we haven't had to do a whole lot of work from a city perspective on this project. It seems like the Tar Heel Trailblazers are kind of leading the way. And if we can help with a small amount of money to get a match from the Carolina Thread Trail, I think it'd be well serving of, I guess, pretty much everybody in town. I think everybody uses the trails one way or another. Even some of the sidewalks are marked as Carolina Thread Trails. So I think it's good. I support it. Happy to entertain if anybody has any concerns, though.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it'll help the Reed community as well, too. Having that park down close by there and ability to get into Cramerton and stuff like that in both ways, I think it's going to be a great thing for the city of Belmont personally.
Thank you, Mayor. Richard, questions, comments?
Well, I don't disagree with what Ryan said. The one question I would have is, what was the feedback received from Reverend Alexander and Oscar Reed when you all spoke with them?
Yeah, good question. So I think we kind of talked about the trail, and at least from what I remember, like the 2 biggest things that I remember from the conversation was they were really excited about the opportunity of their community members, and they had already pre-talked to some people in the community and just discussed that they were going to meet with John and I, but that this could be a walking trail for them. I think they had some past experiences over at Rocky Branch, just the trail difficulty, just even to walk. It's more of a rugged hiking trail right now. And then also a little bit of confusion with wayfinding. So the people that had gone in there kind of went once and didn't really reuse it. And then the other thing I remember is they did have a concern, and the concern was about any type of event out there, which we heard that feedback. I thought that was great feedback because there's not tons of parking at the trailhead. And the way that we took that feedback and went to address it is that we went and talked to Gaston County Schools, because most of our events will, if there's a 5K out there, if there's a mountain biking event, I don't know, what could come of this park is, but there's already events there now, and I could only imagine there might be more. But with Gaston County Schools, what Morgan said is, as long as it's on the weekend, we have plenty of parking. He's like, we'll just need to, basically, there's some paperwork that has to be done when you have an event, but we have no problem having the parking at Stuart Kramer High School, and then you have the connectivity as a thread trail to connect into all the other trails. So that's what I remember, and I know we had promised we're going to still have that community meeting out there and hear their concerns. But I agree. I think this could be especially this trail and even the green zone can be a huge benefit to that community for walkers.
Okay, well, that answers two concerns that I initially had, that Oscar raised at one time about walking and not being in conflict with mountain bikes, coming by. He wanted to walk with his grandchildren, and the parking. So, I mean, if we've got those two issues resolved, that's a big step forward.
Thank you, Richard. Martha.
Yes, I'd like to remind council that this area was my son's Eagle Scout project back in the 90s. And so to see it go from a dump, which it was with shingles, and there was asphalt shingles, all that kind of thing. And he cleaned up the creek with help and cleaned up the entire area. So it's been a long process to get it to this point, but certainly it's quite exciting to see this. The other thing that I want to make sure, I know we had a group of people who were involved in the initial portion of this project, and you guys, we're going to get some input from them. I want to make sure that that happened. Is that correct, that you did get input from that prior group?
Sure. Bruce Euler, who was the trail coordinator.
Right.
I think Bruce is on, but if he wants to speak, he can. But he's actually a member of the committee that was formed. There you are, Bruce. You want to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, they've addressed a lot of the concerns that we were initially looking at. The project has progressed into something that will be really beneficial to the city of Belmont and also Cramerton. The Greenway will make good conductivity, and as far as there was some loss of some stuff that we had built there before, but it's slated to be replaced with bigger and better stuff going down the road.
Okay, good.
Also, initial myself personally with some of the Eagle projects. My son had Eagle projects there. That was also taken into consideration and actually is being maintained and used. So we're pretty satisfied.
Good, thank you.
Thanks, Martha. Mark.
I just have a couple quick questions. I know in the consent agenda we approved a similar resolution for the Abbey Creek Greenway that did not include a local match, and this one does. Is this the same grant, or is there a reason that that one didn't require money and this one does?
This is not a requirement of the match, a requirement for the grant to have a match, but it makes us a stronger candidate to show that the municipality is committed to seeing this project through successfully. So we have had discussions with the director of the Carolina Thread Trail about the cost, the availability of funds, what our project entails. And so they're aware of this funding strategy and support it.
Okay. I'm just a little, I think it's a great project. It looks great. I'm glad that we've resolved a lot of the issues we had with the parking and the access and the preserving the Eagle projects and things of that nature. I'm just a little concerned about scope creep. I noticed that when this project was first proposed in the fall, the phase one cost was about $63,000. And now it looks like, just going off my notes, the phase one now looks like it's about $152,000. So, I'm not necessarily opposed to funding this project. I just don't want to get hit with a nasty surprise when we get to phases 2 and 3 of this project if phase 1 has almost already tripled in cost in 6 months.
Will, do you want to kind of address that one?
I don't know. I don't know if he's still on.
He was on, but I think he had to log out and get back on, so he might be frozen.
Okay.
Well, let's see.
Yeah. You want to take it, Sarah, or you may take it?
Yeah, well, I think I can start, and please, Dave, jump in as well. And that's what I think Dave was trying to bridge for you, Mark, that as we've continued to have conversations with other stakeholders, getting their feedback saying, what you started with was great. We see a lot of potential and excitement for making this something really special for the Carolina Thread Trail, for Belmont and the Gaston County region. So we were prepared for the funding for the original presentation. We think this is an opportunity for Belmont to get a significant trail system for a very small investment and be able to help create something that will have a wider scope and benefit to a broader range in the community. But we definitely understand your concern. So that's where now what you have is more all-weather trail, that you have a wider trail to accommodate more passers and bikers, and then that there is funding available through the Carolina Thread Trail to help with the excess funds. And our intent was to apply the funds that we have raised in the Tar Heel Trailblazer fundraising and grants to be applied to the remaining mountain biking trails. Like
Okay.
Dave or Bruce, yeah, did that cover the things that, because we've been talking about those as well and had that concern.
So do you have any idea of like what the all-in cost for this is going to look like?
We have a range of costs that I actually don't want to share my top range because I don't want it to be communicated with contractors as we go to bid. So we have a low and we have a ceiling, and then we have what we'll have money to afford to be able to build. And so we have designs that cover the range of that.
Yeah, and a lot of the, especially the single track section being built and by Tar Heel Trailblazers, have a lot of opportunity for in-kind donations, material donations, volunteer donations. So, like Sarah said, we do have a low range, you know, and then there's a high range, and it just it kind of depends what the bidding environment is, and then you know what we get back from contractors, and that is going to be something that we do not share publicly because we want competitive bids. So.
Okay.
I guess I say that, and then we've shared this number, but this is kind of a high level estimate to make sure we have the funding available, and hopefully we get good bids in that we can well below that, see some savings for the city.
I appreciate all the effort made involving this project. I think you've done a wonderful job with this.
Thank you.
Well, I have a couple questions, sort of to follow up on some of what Mark asked. So I'm assuming, since you're making this request to the Thread Trail itself, that there's probably a decent chance that this grant might be obtained. But if for some reason it's not, would it be my understanding that then we just go back to the drawing board? In other words, I wouldn't want the city to be on the hook for the whole thing if for whatever reason the grant application did not succeed, was not, and the grant was not awarded. You know, this is a resolution of support, but I just want to make sure we don't end up being on the hook for more than we bargained for.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. And that's why we wanted to share some of our funding progress with you as well, to show that we have the funds available today to fulfill the other half of that. And what it would do is prolong the completion of the remainder of the trail. But
And again, this is my understanding, is this can stand on its own, that regardless of what you all do with the remaining trails, if this is all that can be funded and constructed for the time being, that it's standalone and it's complete in itself and could be used for the purpose that we want to build it, without any of the other bike trails that you've talked about, if none of those come to fruition. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, I mean, bike trails exist there today, right? And
Right,
so
right.
the intent
But
is that
if nothing else that you are talking about, or if that ends up taking a lot longer than you anticipate, even if we construct what you're asking for today, it'll be complete, and you know the people can enjoy it without
correct.
the enhancements.
And then I would even highlight, Dave and Bruce help me here as well, but we can construct the Belmont portion, and that is independent of the Creamerton portion. So if the Creamerton portion was not successful, our thread trail would still connect with the existing trail today. It just
Sorry.
All right.
So even those two elements are independent of each other, but we're trying to create a master plan so that everything is successful together.
How does the my last question? How does the fact that if you go back to the map of the property, and as we discussed in the fall, or you discussed with council in the fall, part of that property is privately owned. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that we have access to it through a memorandum of understanding, which
Yes.
tends to be renewed every 2 years or so.
Yes.
How does that play into it? I mean, is there a risk that if the memorandum of understanding is not renewed, that then this large portion of the thread trail can be shut down, for lack of a better phrase, and people not have access to it?
Dave?
Yeah, so Brett actually with Carolina Thread Trail told us that there is a lot of Carolina Thread Trail actually that exists today on private property through memorandums of understanding, through MOUs, and with the municipalities. And so if you kind of look at this map too, where we've got it designed is kind of the best case scenario. It runs kind of along the edge of the property. But we got to keep in mind too that the city has the first right of refusal based on the MOU for sale of the property. So it's all in the city's hands. But we also, want to work with city staff, and there is some discussion about whether we can have a more concrete long-term agreement with the landowner, something that would give us a little more security. But, for the worst case scenario that we lost that property in that section, the park can still stand alone on its own. It still would be a nice natural surface trail. It would still be the first two zones, the green zone and the blue zone. They're all inclusive on the Belmont owned portion. So we've taken that kind of into consideration, and we're trying to mitigate the risk as best we can.
And building the trail reduces that risk, we feel.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, we feel like this is going to be an amenity for Belmont, and hopefully that gives us a little momentum for keeping it.
Okay. The only other question I had, I guess, I looked at the draft resolution, and there's no a specific dollar amount. Just based on what you said, I'd like to make it clear that if we were to pass this, the funding would be up to $46,025. As I understand it, you made a high end estimate. So I certainly, if it's less than that, if half of what the actual cost is less than that, then that would be fine too. But rather than committing to a specific dollar amount, but I don't think we'd have to amend the resolution because there's no dollar amount in the resolution. It's just a resolution of support.
Exactly. And I think Adrian could probably advise you the details. I know tonight you guys are actually not going to be voting on to approve the funding. You're just voting on the memorandum of understanding. But that this funding right now is kind of in the budget for the next fiscal year. So that will be part of your budget hearing, I assume for next month. But yes, I totally agree. We would only, if we got a bid for 80,000, the city would only be 50%.
Okay. Thank you. Adrian, do you want to address the budget?
Yes, sir. So I have included the $46,025 in my proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year. So my understanding of the timeline is that money would not be needed until the new fiscal year. So it will be in there if you approve the budget. Then obviously we'll award the project at that time. So the funding is there if we're successful with this grant application.
So then really the what we're voting on today is simply a resolution of support for the project.
Right, and authorizing us to offer this as a matching grant.
Okay. And did anyone have any follow-up based on the questions and answers?
No.
Right. If there's nothing further, I believe at this time it would be appropriate to entertain a motion.
I'll make
Should
a motion.
I'll second.
Well, well, hold on. What
Okay.
what are we moving for?
Ryan?
Approve the resolution.
Yeah, to approve the resolution of support for a Carolina Thread Trail grant for the Rocky Branch Park Enhancement Project.
Okay, Ryan has made that motion. Martha, you still second?
I'll still second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the resolution passes. Thank you all. Thank you to the group with the Tar Heel Trailblazers and the park for your time and commitment tonight. Let me, before I forget, let me take the host duties or the presenter duties back from David and give them to Adrian. And once that's done, I will, if there's nothing else, we can excuse those folks. Unless you all want to stay on the line and listen to all of our other exciting discussion, you all can sign off.
Thank you.
As appealing as that sounds, but appreciate all your support and stay safe.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So having wrapped up that agenda item and with the presenter duties back to Adrian, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing to consider text amendment 2020.02, amendment of various chapters of the Land Development Code, a request to amend various chapters of the Land Development Code to change the name of the conditional use permit to special use permit consistent with state law. This amendment also includes the ability to request for temporary institutional housing through the special use permit process. I will let Adrian introduce the topic, and then he will turn it over, I believe, to Shelley DeHart, our planning director.
Do we need to make a motion to go into public hearing?
So you pull out of your ear, it goes back to your phone.
What was that?
Do we need a motion to go into public?
Yes, I believe we do.
I'll make a motion.
Martha's made a motion to go into public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Richard has seconded. All those in favor of going into public hearing? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we are now in public hearing. Adrian, if you will, I don't know if you need to introduce anything.
Yeah, I'll introduce Shelley DeHart, and Shelley has the PowerPoint pulled up. So, Shelley, if you click on share, you should be able to do your presentation.
So you want me to make Shelley the presenter?
Yes, please.
Okay, where are you, Shelley?
She does a better job than I do.
Let me find her here. Oh, there she is. There's a train coming through.
Yes.
All right, Shelley, you should be able to share now.
Okay, 1 second. Let's see. Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Council. The item before you, as read into the record, is Text Amendment 2020.02. This is a request to amend various chapters of Belmont's Land Development Code, specifically chapters 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 15, and 16 of the LDC. Now, a request by Belmont Abbey's new residence hall construction team is the impetus for this amendment. Their request to allow temporary student housing due to construction delays was shared with the City Council at a previous workshop because our ordinance is silent on this type of temporary use. Council indicated at the workshop that they'd be willing to consider the request if processed by a conditional use permit, which brings us to tonight's amendment. Now, staff took the opportunity to incorporate other relevant modifications to the ordinance to bring us into compliance with recent changes to state law that consolidated land use and development regulations found in the state's Chapter 160A. So within this amendment, you'll find modifications consistent with the changes of the state law that addresses the name of a conditional use permit, a CUP, to a special use permit, or SUP. Same process, different name, mandated by the state. Second, it incorporates an amendment that would allow requests for temporary institutional housing to be considered by the City Council by a special use permit up to a maximum of a 1-year time period. The last portion of this amendment is to bring various sections into compliance with state law again by changing references from the 160A chapter of the state to 160D. And we also incorporated some changes that were mandated by the state with regard to definitions found in Chapter 2. So the table that's shown on your screen and also within your report outlines the chapters proposed to be amended, the pages of each chapter in which the modifications are proposed, as well as what type of changes were incorporated. And within your report, they're all outlined or identified as in ready. So this amendment went to the planning board at their April meeting. There were some minor numerical edits proposed, which have been incorporated. The board did find that this project is consistent with Goal 8 of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan because it supports intergovernmental relations by bringing our local ordinances into compliance with state law. After hearing all information and making the consistency finding, the planning board did recommend a approval of the amendment to City Council as presented here tonight. We ask that you receive the planning board's recommendation to approve and any public comment provided here tonight to consider this amendment. And that concludes my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. Richard, let's start with you. Any questions or concerns you wish to address with Shelley?
Not really, but one thing caught my eye, and I guess I would address it to Shelley, is why are we removing the requirement for bed and breakfast to be owner occupied?
Yes, that has been in our code for a while, and what we found is based on trainings with the School of Government that that is prohibited. You can't mandate, you cannot mandate that homes be owner occupied.
Okay, so it is illegal for us to say a bed and breakfast has to be owner occupied.
Right, that's an allowed use. We're saying it's allowed use, but we're mandating the property owner live in the home. It's the same with, we had another section regarding cottages, or we refer to them as accessory dwelling units, and our ordinance currently mandates that the main house be owner occupied, which again is not consistent with state law, and that's something we're currently working on with a little subcommittee to bring that back before you.
So thank you, Jonathan. It really caught my eye.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Mayor, any comments or questions?
No, I think it's pretty well self-explanatory. It's consistent with state law, and I had no problem with that whatsoever.
Thank you. Martha.
No questions.
Mark.
No, I had the same question about the bed and breakfast thing that Richard did. So answer that.
Great minds
So
think
that was
alike.
it.
Thanks, Mark. Ryan, anything from you?
No questions.
Okay. Shelley, just for old time's sake. So
I
you
knew.
didn't. Yes, you probably got this through a lot easier without Neil and myself at the planning board. But the new definitions of developer and dwelling were those from like some was those from state law, or where do they come from?
They came from the state law, the actual adopted state law.
Okay.
We also, I will share that we also utilized the newly published book by the School of Government, Chapter 160D, a new land use law for North Carolina, as well as their checklist to help guide municipalities in these amendments. So we did reach out to the School of Government to help us.
Excellent. If you look at section 6.2.4, I would re-letter subsection D to subsection C, since you're in subsection C, which is the ownership requirement.
Okay.
I noticed there are a couple of other changes in wording based on conditional use permit being changed to special use permit. And I noticed if you look at 15.10, 1, I think we're all familiar, whether from the planning board or city council, that, we always say it was a quasi-judicial hearing on the conditional use permit. And now they changed that from quasi-judicial to evidentiary. Is that any different? I mean, quasi-judicial has a certain meaning, as I understand it. So what was the catalyst for that?
Actually, that change was a recommendation from the city attorney. Based on state law, they wanted to change language where we're going to call hearings by different names, but they specifically wanted us to use, instead of quasi-judicial, as evidentiary. And again, that was something the city attorney came back and specifically asked that I'd look at and change.
Okay, but we're still considering the same factors, if you will.
Yes, it's the same required. Yes, it's the same required findings. It's still quasi-judicial. They just renamed it as far as the hearing, what we're calling it, evidentiary.
Okay. And then the only other thing I had, if you look at 1510 subsection 2, there are a couple of references to conditions. I noticed elsewhere we changed conditions to performance standards. Should we do the same thing there?
No. So you can place conditions on a special use permit. Where we changed, you have allowed uses by right. You have, our ordinance used to say you have allowed uses with conditions, and then you had allowed uses by conditional use permit. So to clarify all that, we changed it to, of course, uses by right, uses with performance standards. That means they reference Chapter 6, and there are certain requirements that they need to meet, but we're not calling those conditions. But then if you process a special use permit, you can place conditions of approval within a special use permit. So we just tried to straighten out the terminology so we wouldn't get uses confused.
Yes, and I think everyone will be happy about that going forward, just based on the confusion I remember we all had on the planning board and city council. So thank you. That's all I had. Does anyone have any follow-up?
No.
All right. This is a public hearing, so there is the availability of public comment. My understanding is that there was no public comment submitted for this item. Is that correct, Adrian?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
All right. If there's nothing else from anyone, I don't think there's anything to do but to make a motion to go out of public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Martha has moved to go out of public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Richard seconds. All those in favor of going out of public hearing?
Aye.
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 All right, we are out of public hearing. Back on the agenda, we move to item number 4. Consider approval of an ordinance adopting zoning text amendment 2022-02, an amendment of various chapters of the Land Development Code to change the name of the conditional use permit to special use permit consistent with state law. This amendment also includes the ability to request temporary institutional housing through the special use permit process. Judging by the fact that there were no additional comments, would there be a motion to approve the ordinance or adopt the ordinance?
I'll make that motion.
All right, Martha has made a motion to approve the ordinance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Ryan seconds. We have a motion to approve the ordinance in a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. I believe we also need to make a consistency finding. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is there anyone who will make a motion to find this amendment consistent with the comprehensive land use plan?
I'll make that motion.
All right, and would you move to find it consistent specifically with goal number 8?
Yes.
Intergovernmental? Yes.
Yes, I will.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Great. Martha has moved to find the amendment consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. Is there a second?
I'll second, Ryan.
Ryan seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. We have a consistency finding as well. Thank you, Shelley, for your efforts in connection with this. Very good. With that, I will endeavor to, where'd Shelley go? Take the presenter duties from Shelley back to Adrian, because we have another public hearing as our next agenda item, and that is a public hearing on a resolution creating the Belmont Small Business Emergency Loan Program to help keep the lights on in Belmont. So once again, do we have a motion to go into public hearing?
I'll make a motion to go into public hearing.
Martha's moved to go into public hearing. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Richard seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing. I will turn it back over to Adrian to present the report in this regard.
Thank you, Jim. I don't have a presentation for this public hearing, but this public hearing is to adopt the Small Business Emergency Loan Program through the Economic Development Statute of the General Statutes, which is Chapter 158-7 of the North Carolina General Statutes. As you'll recall, the City Council met in a special session on March the 30th to consider approval of a Small Business Emergency Loan Program as part of our Keep the Lights On in Belmont response to the COVID-19 economic crisis. And you approved that unanimously, but you approved it through your Emergency Powers Act, or your Chapter 166A authority. And we did this under guidance from the UNC School of Government professors who offered kind of a blueprint for how to create these emergency small business loans through the Emergency Powers Act. But then because it is also economic development, it needs to be ratified through a public hearing process that we're going through tonight. So that's why you've already done this once through one section of the General Statutes, and you need to do it again tonight. Just for the record, this program would spend up to $400,000 for small business loans that would have a maximum loan value of $10,000. These would be 36-month term loans, with the first 12 months of payments being deferred by the recipient of the loan. And the interest rate, these are unsecured loans, so the interest rate is 7%, which is higher than what you would find if you went to your local bank. That is because these are unsecured loans, and we are not allowed to compete with private lenders. So the school government gave us guidance that says you need to have an interest rate that reflects both the unsecured nature, the risky nature of the loan, and the fact that you are not to compete with private lenders. So you approved of this plan with 7% interest, 36-month terms, and 12-month deferred payments. Since then, we have the committee that is reviewing these loan applications has approved 8 loans for a total of $76,000. And so as part of what we're asking tonight, when you get to the next item on the agenda, which is is that you will consider approval of both the program as well as retroactive approval of those 8 loans that we've already committed. That way there's no question as to their legality. So the resolution includes that retroactive approval, but the resolution is the same resolution that you adopted on March the 30th. It just has a different statutory reference. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Does anyone have any questions for Adrian in this regard?
No.
All right. If there are no questions, I think it is appropriate. Since it is a public hearing, there is an opportunity for public comment. My understanding is that no public comments were received. I just want to confirm that with Adrian.
That is correct. We did not receive any public comments for this hearing.
Okay. With no public comments and no further follow-up from council members, I believe it would be appropriate to entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
I'll make a motion to go out of public hearing.
Martha's moved to go out of public hearing. Anyone want to second that?
I'll second.
Ryan seconds. Motion to go out of public hearing seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, we are now out of public hearing and on to our next agenda item, which is consider approval of a resolution creating the Belmont Small Business Emergency Loan Program to help keep the lights on in Belmont. Do I have a motion in that regard?
I'll make a motion to approve that resolution.
Including retroactively approving.
Right, including the retroactive portion of that.
All right, Martha has moved to approve. Richard, is that a second?
It is.
Yes, Richard seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, moving right along to item number 7, an update on commercial code enforcement case at 951 Quezon Street. I will turn it over to Adrian, and I know Chris Ray is on the call. Is there going to be a presentation? Do I need to make him a presenter?
No, sir. I do not believe he has a presentation.
Okay.
So,
then I'll turn it over to you with Chris Ray also available.
thank you. So this is an update on the commercial code enforcement case at 951 Quezon Street. This is something we've talked about at multiple city council meetings. You had a demolition ordinance at your ready at the December meeting. You granted an extension for some work to be done. There was a plan and timeline in place at the April 20th special meeting, the workshop that we went through, and there were some milestones to be met. So I will turn it over to our code enforcement officer, Chris Ray, to give you an update on that. So Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. First off, I want to give you a synopsis of what has happened since we initiated this on this particular property. Back in July of last year, this ordinance was passed. On July the 11th, an inspection was complete on that property at 951 Quezon Street. 8:15, there was a hearing that was held at City Hall. On 8/19, a 90-day letter was sent to the property owner, giving him 90 days to repair or demolish the property. On the 18th of November, that 90-day period was ended. The 21st of November of last year, demolition letter was sent to the property owner. At your December meeting, an ordinance was presented to the council, and you in turn granted a 60-day extension, and a letter was sent on the following day, on the 3rd. February the 5th meeting, there was some concern about securing it. Council voted to give the property owner 14-day extension to get a fence erected around the property there at the front, and that was complete. On February the 3rd, a Gaston County building permit was issued. That has been confirmed on February the, wait a minute, I'm sorry. On March the 2nd, you had requested a timeline, which we did not have at that time. And at the April meeting, a timeline was given to council, with the timeline being front wall was to be completed by May 31st. The roof was to be completed August 1st, and the back wall, which is the furthest wall from Quezon Street, was to be completed on October the 1st. At your meeting on the 20th, I believe that was the correct date. I was not online then. You requested that he pull a city zoning permit that was at that special meeting. On the 21st of April, it was verified that the building permit was obtained, and it was active. On the 1st of May, I spoke with the building inspector. During that week, actually during those 2 weeks between your special meeting and tonight, there have been several conversations that I've had with Gaston County staff, our own fire department staff, and other resources as well. I can tell you that as of today, the property owner has obtained a city building permit, city zoning permit through our zoning department. I was looking back at some photos because I was kind of curious as to when the work was started and when he pulled the permit for the county. Well, he actually pulled that permit on the 3rd of February, and according to the photo that I have on file, that's when he started removing the wall that is closest to Quezon Street. March the 3rd, a month later, the old wall was down, and that's when he started rebuilding that same. I'll apologize for the confusion on the building and the zoning permits. When my office was located at planning and zoning building, I had assisted staff with issuing some permits. And I can tell you that at that time, now we're talking 3-4 years ago, at that time, the county would not issue any type of building permit to an individual or to a contractor without first obtaining a zoning permit through the city. So evidently that has changed, because once I talked to staff at the inspections department, Gaston County, they verified that they told him that he did not need a zoning permit through us. Well, since then that has been corrected. He does, as of today, have a zoning permit. I have it on hand. I have it on the file, and he is continuing to move forward with progress on repairing the building. I think there was some confusion too, as when it comes to repairing and restoring. He is not in the process of restoring this building to use. He is in the process of repairing this building to save it from demolition. That is his only goal. He has no goal of putting anything in there of using that space, none whatsoever in the future. It might come down to it 10, 15 years from now. He may want to use that. I don't know that. According to him, the property owner, he has no plans to use that as of this time.
Thank you, Chris. Anything further?
I I'll answer any questions that I can.
All right. Let's start with Martha. Any questions or comments on this issue?
Well, just out of curiosity, if he's not planning to use it, is there any indication from him as to why he would spend this amount of money?
He just wants to save that building. He don't want it tore down.
All right.
He doesn't want. Well,
that seems kind of silly, but all right.
I would
Thank
agree.
you. Mm-hmm.
anything else, Martha?
No.
All right, Mark.
No. I just had something I just completely slipped my mind. Oh, the roof. So I don't know anything about commercial roofs. I know it's a big roof. It just seems like 3 months to get a roof installed seems like a long time.
Yeah, this is a pretty big structure. I don't know if how many of council has been by there. It might be in your best interest to ride by there if you haven't, just to take a look. The roof is big. The roof is actually intact as far as structural members, joists, and that type thing. It's more or less the covering. One of the reasons why this timeline is so spread out is because he had a 5-man crew, and with the virus, he is down to 1-man crew and himself. And the way he expressed it, it's more or less him. It's a rubber membrane that is actually covering the roof, and that is what is failing. And that's his intent, is to repair that rubber membrane on that roof. I don't know how much time that's going to take him. I think he erred on the side of caution rather than put it a month out. That's all I can gather.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just not inclined to cut this guy a lot of slack at this point. That's why I was just kind of, with the timeline he's got pushing out to October. I don't know. I guess I'll see what everybody else thinks.
Right.
He may sell the property anyway. We don't know that.
And this is true.
All right, Ryan.
I guess I look at it that we've been dealing with this since July of last year, and so we're almost 10 months since the beginning of this process, and the timeline's pushed it out to October 1st, and we've only been dealing with the COVID-19 crisis for what, 6 weeks, 2 months max. So I'd be more inclined to just go ahead back and approve the demolition ordinance from December. Be my view.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. Richard.
I have no interest in what he is going to use the building for. I do have an interest in that it meets code and that the building's secure, and that happens sooner rather than later. Since Ryan is frustrated with the timeline, I am as well. I think we have been very generous as a council and a city in extending that out. But regardless of the virus and the other issues that he has confronted, we have to put some closure on this at some point.
I apologize. I can tell you that I spoke with the inspector from the county. I filed a complaint with the county. They sent a building inspector out there. I spoke with him over the phone, and he has said that the work that he has done so far does meet code. That the county is not concerned with, there again, this is where this all began. The county is not concerned with the building being secure. The fire code does state that the building should be secure, which could be resolved with some type of fence. Well, he erected a fence in the front. There is a existing chain link fence in the rear where the missing wall is, that he would need to enclose just a small portion of the 2 ends, and that would suffice the structure being secure. The other thing the fire code addresses is that it has to be empty of combustibles. There's not much stuff in there. I don't know the terminology, but it's something that they used to store cotton in, small, tall cardboard barrels. So those would have to be removed once he began again, and that would be relayed to this property owner.
All right. Well, one of the concerns that I have is this building is across the street from a park, and the city has issued the demolition order, and we have deferred and deferred. I guess I would leave it to the legal minds to answer this question, but if somebody were to go in that building and get hurt, do we have any exposure because we have issued a lawful order for demolition, that we have gone on and extended that order and extended it? And are we setting ourselves up for a potential problem if something were to occur on site?
Parks.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be pretty far removed. It used to be of concern because it was an attractive nuisance, is what the legal term is, when it would almost attract someone to come in. But now that it's been fortified on the sides and there's no openness anymore, the fact that we just got this order out there doesn't expose us to any liability, I don't think.
All right, thank you. Mayor Martin, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, there's several things. First of all, the person has tried to remedy some of the situations with the building. I know it's been a while, but same time with all the stuff going on, the fact he's just on a one-man crew right now, I think that needs to be taken into consideration. And I really feel like under circumstances, if it's safe, and like Park said, it's not going to be a hazard as far as attracting anybody or anything like that, I have no problem with giving the man a little more time.
All right. I agree with Richard as silly as it sounds. Well, he doesn't want to do anything with it, with the building. He just wants to, stop it from being demolished. And we can say, well, that's, but I agree, as silly as we might think that is, that's really not our concern. It's his property. And as long as it meets code, if that's what he wants to do with it, we can't say, well, we think it would be better if we did this, or you can't just leave but, we also get to the point. I mean, what's the end game? I mean, I sense the growing frustration, and I've been among the earliest frustrated people with this. There's always just enough, and usually done on the day of council meetings, to sort of move the ball along. So what are our options? I mean, what's the sense of the group? What do we want to do? If we decide that we're done with this procedurally, what does that mean? Does that mean like there's a demolition order tomorrow, or does it mean we put the demolition order back on the agenda for a future meeting? I'm just trying to figure out what we can do, because I'm getting tired of this game that we keep playing.
I have a feeling he's going to sell the property. That's my gut feeling. Don't ask me why, but he spent a little bit of money in this, and I think he's tried to do what was right. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt and extending it a little longer.
I somewhat agree with Charlie, but for a little bit different reason. I feel like that if he looked at this piece of property, if he's interested in selling it, it's more saleable with a usable building. So that would be what I'm thinking he's doing, even though he's not sure at this point which direction he's going. So the other part of this too is the more he puts into it, which he already has, the more the cost for the demolition is going to be on our end, at least initially. So I'm amenable to as long as we keep within this timeline that we've set, that we're okay. But as I said, I certainly am frustrated like everybody else, but I think that as I said, I would be supportive of this timeline, and that's it. So you've got enough time to figure it out.
So if that's the sense of our board, what's the next step? Where, do we say, all right, Let's hear about it at the June meeting because his next guidepost is May 31st. So we'll
Yes.
know by June whether he complies with it or not. Is that what we do?
That's what I would think.
It wouldn't hurt anything to do that.
Well,
Mr. Sheffield, can I say something?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll follow the council's lead, and obviously, we want to make sure that we stick with the strict guidelines. A couple of concerns that I have is, one is that he just wants to get it in compliance to keep it from being demoed, which really doesn't show that there's a lot of buy-in to doing a lot with that building. So it concerns me as long as it's taken to get this process done, when other issues come up, because the building is going to continue to deteriorate. So, and it takes a long time to get him to do things that he says he's going to do. So I would just ask that whatever the timelines are, whatever the guidelines are, we really stick to them. If not, then we may be back in the same boat and the building may be deteriorating further if his only goal is to make the repairs necessary to keep it from being demoed. It's just a thought I have.
Thank you, Chief.
Jim?
Richard?
Yeah, you know, we're going to be building a park and rec building. Part of that process is we get timelines from our contractors and we hold them to it. At some point, I think we need a hard stop on this. If it just needs a roof or rubber membrane, you know, I mean, we factor in weather, I guess the virus to some extent, but we come up with a date that is a hard stop with no more extensions. You know, this has to be closed out by this date. You have to make this happen. You know, there's still construction going on in the area, and you know, if some of their crews go down, they fill them in with other people, and you know, progress continues. So if his crew has gone down, he needs to reach out and find some other people who are capable of laying a rubber membrane to keep this process moving forward. I mean, that's my view, is that at some point we have to have some kind of hard stop. We have to assess it. I'm not in the construction business, so I could not develop a reasonable timeline to say, this is what is left for you to do to bring this building into compliance. This might be the standard time frame in the industry for that to be completed. This is your time frame then.
Yeah. Mark, what's your sense?
I'm thinking that we should probably decide on like a drop dead date, kind of like what Richard's talking about, rather than basically acting like this guy's construction manager, where we kind of set these goals for him, and you know, we're basically managing his project at this point. You know, I don't know that it's really worth our time and staff's time to be spending so much time, you know, dealing with the minutia of getting, you know, rubber membranes on roof and replacing walls and that kind of thing. At least kind of where I'm at is I feel like we pick a date that is reasonable, and you know, he's either done or he's not, and you know, we just proceed accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, do you know how much he spent on the building?
No, sir, I don't. I can get that information, but I don't know right at this point.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Well, so I guess if I understand what Mark and Richard are saying is, we say, all right, forget these. You know, what does he have? That 3-step: May 31st, the roof. You know, July this wall, October that wall, or something. Do we want to just say, all right, here's a date, whether it's one of those dates or some other date we pick? If the whole thing isn't done on this date, that's it. Or is the sense something else?
That's fair. That's fair.
So just to recap here, so we had the card feeder building down on Wilkinson Boulevard, and we had this building up on Cason Street, and we had no authority over them because the county said that they were in compliance with the county. So we changed our policy so that the city could get involved and raise the standard and get a higher standard. What I'm hearing now is this guy wants to shoot for the lowest standard, even with a 15, 16-month timeline. So, I'm happy to support the consensus of council on how we move forward here, but I'm also happy to issue the demolition tonight and put our staff on other projects that aren't shooting for the bare minimum. If you guys want to go for a hard date, I think anything past the 1-year anniversary mark when we originated this is outrageous. I think that's a slap in the face to the owners of the card reader place. I think it's a slap in the face to anybody else that's ever received a notice in town. I don't understand why this guy gets all the leeway and everybody else has to play by the rules.
I would agree with that. I would have suggested July as, get it all done by July, or we're done with you. What Martha, Mark, Richard, what do you think?
I'm fine to set a hard date. I just don't know what's reasonable at this point because we don't know all the construction people.
Yeah,
certainly. Yeah, he should be able, he can get somebody, hire somebody to come and put the roof on if he does not literally have to do it himself. If he's that concerned about the building, go ahead and hire somebody to finish the project.
It's hard to know what's reasonable, but he's hardly been a paragon of reason himself in his actions over the last year either. So.
And I have noticed that when push comes to shove, he finds ways to get stuff done.
Yeah,
usually that wall went up pretty quickly once he was staring down a demolition ordinance.
A one-man crew putting a roof on is not reasonable. He is going to have to hire some folks.
So Chris, when did you say this original July? Was it July 3rd?
The inspection was done July 11th.
July 11.
The hearing date was August 15th. That's when it was decided that he didn't want it demoed. He wanted to repair it, which was August 15th.
Well, if we do that, then is August 15th an appropriate drop dead date for everyone or not?
I think it has several benefits. It would stop us from having to talk about it every month because we'd either all right, that's our course of action, and then come August 14th or August 15th. What's the standard then? What does he have to show on August 15th in order to be in compliance?
Well, I'll make a proposal that we say that he has to have it secure, has to have the walls up and the roof on by August 15th because that's the year anniversary, as I think Ryan indicated, and I think that's an appropriate time.
How about August 14th? Because August 15th is technically a year and a day.
Oh my! Okay,
and
August 14th.
I'll point out that based on your meeting schedule, you have a workshop on Monday, August the 17th, as the 15th falls on a Saturday. So you could have the demolition ordinance ready to go, and we can have it on the agenda for your August the 17th special meeting. Okay. And Chris can report that he's either complied with the ordinance or he has not. And if he's not in compliance, then you sign the order for demolition.
Yeah. But I want what's conveyed to him to be, like what Martha said, objective criteria so that we can say he's either met it or not. Not, well, he's kind of done some of it and he's moved the ball a little bit. I want it to be something that, here's our checklist. Is the roof in place? Is the wall secure? Check, check, check. He either met it or he didn't. And if he didn't, then here's the demolition order and we sign it. And, good luck to you.
Jim, who's going to go out there and assess that on that date? Is that Chris?
Chris.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that as long as the building meets the order on that date.
Yeah.
Because
it either does or it doesn't. Yeah. And we proceed accordingly, but we don't just keep bringing this up every 2 weeks, whether it's at a workshop or at a regular council meeting.
Well, I think
inform him what our intentions are. If he doesn't get his project done, what he's planning to do, that's going to be the drop dead date.
Yeah, I think I heard one of the council members say that they were kind of tired of listening and hearing about it. I'm there too.
Yes. All right. Is anyone else have any further thoughts? Ryan, Mark?
No, I mean, I think I'm in agreement with the general course we've decided on here. I guess my interpretation of kind of like what we're doing would be not necessarily having a specific punch list, but like it's either in compliance or it's not.
Yeah.
And then Chris
Right.
can just certify to that.
Yes.
You know, I guess from my perspective, I don't necessarily need to know much more than that at this
Yeah.
point.
All right, well,
Well,
I'll make
compliance with what? Compliance with our city?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Do we need a motion, or is just the consensus enough?
Do we need a motion?
I'd like y'all to make a motion.
Okay, I'll
All
make
right.
a motion that we set August 14th as the deadline for the project to be completed. And at that point, if that is not done on August 17th, we'll set an order for demolition.
All right. Martha has made that motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Oh, Mark seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The motion carries. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Hopefully there's an end in sight.
Hopefully.
Yes. All right. We have one more item on the main business agenda, and that is consider approval of multi-jurisdictional Spot 6.0 submittal letter for Woodlawn Street bike ped improvements. Adrian, over to you.
Thank you. And I do have a slide for this, and I would ask that Tiffany Farrow be the, she will give the presentation, but make me the presenter, and I will share.
You are the presenter.
Okay. We will try this again.
All right. It's there.
Did that work?
It worked.
Here. I've had a whole meeting to get this ready. And so Tiffany has been patiently waiting to present this to you, so I will turn it over to Tiffany.
All right, so for this item, the Gaston Cleveland Lincoln Metropolitan Planning Organization, or GCLMPO, has requested Belmont's support of a multi-jurisdictional Spot 6.0 submittal, which would include 5-foot wide bicycle lanes on each side of Woodlawn Street, as well as a 5-foot wide sidewalk addition and reconstructions as needed along Woodlawn Street, going all the way from Hickory Grove Road to Belmont Mount Holly Road. And so due to the length of this proposed segment, that's why they're asking for it to be multi-jurisdictional, as part of this is in Belmont and part of it is in Gaston County. This, for the record, is not an actual project yet, but they would like to submit this as part of their proposed projects for consideration by NCDOT to see if the project scores well enough to be included in upcoming plans. And so before they can submit that, they're asking Belmont for its interest and a letter of support if we are interested in moving forward. So if this project is supported by Belmont and is selected for funding, it would become part of the fiscal year 2023 to 2032 STIP, which would be approved in early 2022 at the earliest. And so the start of any preliminary engineering for any work that might come out of this whole idea or concept would be somewhere between 3 and 10 years from now. So it's definitely a proposed project, and even if it gets awarded, one that would be far off in the horizon, but one that is in the early exploration stages for our consideration. So approximately 58% of this project is located within the city of Belmont's municipal limits, and 42% of the project is in the unincorporated portion in Gaston County. So NCDOT, again, has not awarded this project, but the Metropolitan Planning Organization has come up with some preliminary construction estimates for our consideration, just to have some numbers to look at in the event that this project was scored high enough to be included in the STIP. And so the initial estimates are about $8.6 million in construction costs. However, Belmont's portion of this, if we are in support, would only be 11.6%. And that money would be due at the time of construction, which again is a few years away. So if the city council would like to move forward with that idea as proposed, then both the city of Belmont and Gaston County would need to sign a letter of support, which has been included in your packet for consideration. Ask them to submit that to NCDOT on our behalf as part of the Spot 6.0 submittal. Gaston County staff were checked in with, and they are favorable in support, but they are also seeking their support from their county leadership as well. So that's what I have for you, and if you have any questions, please let me know.
All right. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Martha.
I have a comment. We've looked at this area for a number of years as a blighted area, and there's some revitalization efforts going on now. So I think anything we can do to support that, which this would be a step forward, is quite exciting actually to see that happen, even if it is as much as 10 years out. So I'm very much in support of this.
All right. Thank you, Martha. Mark, anything from you?
No, I mean, I just kind of echo what Martha just said. Seems like a really good opportunity for this part of town. I know that talking to some people up there, there's a lot of, they need, sidewalks and bike lanes and things of that nature. There's not really a whole lot of that up there. So I think this would be a nice project for the area.
Yes. Thank you. Ryan, we may have lost you. I'm seeing a blank screen. Are you still there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
I think everything going on in North Belmont right now is pretty exciting with I guess it's called the Riverwalk Business Park and this opportunity. And if we can get that old Caseland Street building fixed or demoed and get the park going and stuff, I think we got to come at this area from all angles. And this sounds like a good opportunity to partner with the county and the state and add some recreational opportunities for the folks who live there.
Thank you. Richard?
No, I agree with everyone. I think it's a good project. It's cost sharing to get this thing done. The only, I don't know if it's a concern, it's just something to keep our eye on. If this is, 3 or possibly 10 years out, our percentage contribution will remain the same, but there's no telling what construction costs might be 6, 7, 8 years down the road. So just something to keep our eye on is, although our percentage will remain the same, the costs, could increase substantially. Of course, they could go down, but I would not bet on it. But I think it's a good project.
Thank you. Mayor Martin?
I think the fact that it's going to enhance the connectivity with the city of Belmont up to North Belmont, I think it's going to be a big impact on us in the long run when that gets done. It's going to help a lot of development and things like that too. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. I would just echo what everyone has said, and I know I've heard from people within the last year about the importance of increasing connectivity in North Belmont, and I think this would go a long way towards doing that and be a really good project. My only question would be for Adrian. I think I recollect when we were approving the River West development that Ryan mentioned. I think sidewalks on Woodlawn were part of that, or at least some portion of that. Now, I believe that sidewalk was within what we were going to pay for anyway as part of the incentive package, but I was just wondering if you could sort of lay out how this project would coincide with what was agreed as part of the River West development.
Yes, sir. So the developer of the River West Business Park is required to put in a sidewalk along their property frontage of Woodlawn between Acme Street and Caseland Street. Of course, we're partnering with some of that cost, but that is part of their development plan. This obviously would be a much larger project. We don't have a concept plan. This is for bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides of the street. The sidewalk that we would require was only on the north side of the street running the development property. So certainly my hope would be that we could reuse what will be the new sidewalk when it's in place, put in by the developer. So they will essentially pay a portion of this cost. So maybe our overall cost will not be that full $1 million figure that you see right now, because some of that will have already been built.
All right. Well, that would be a benefit.
Yes.
Yes. All right. That's all I had. Any follow-up from anyone?
I just want to add, Tiffany did a great job with her presentation. It was really good.
Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you, Tiffany. If there's nothing else, I think it would be appropriate to entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make that motion.
And what specifically are you moving for?
Support the proposed submittal for Woodlawn Street, the sidewalk construction, multi-jurisdictional.
Okay. Richard has moved to approve, voice our support for this project. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Martha seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you again, Tiffany.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, moving on to reports. Adrian.
Thank you. The next 4 items are reports from your advisory board committees, and I do still have a slide, so I want to leave my shared screen on the up there with you. But you have the minutes from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board from both their March the 11th as well as their April the 22nd meeting. The Planning Board minutes from their April the 16th meeting in the Main Street Advisory Board and Downtown Belmont Development Association for their April the 16th meetings. And then for the manager's report, just a couple items. We have canceled or postponed all of our special events for the month of May because of the COVID-19 health crisis. We are still operating, as I've reported to you. We're operating as normal, although nothing is really normal these days. But we are taking precautions using proper PPE with masks and gloves, social distancing. We have split our shifts so that we don't have more than 10 people reporting public works at a time. Our police officers are being cautious when approaching the public. So as our department, so we are taking all the necessary precautions that experts suggest that we do. We are hopeful, and I will go to the next slide if I can. We are hopeful that the governor will move toward phase 1. He had a press conference today and kind of outlined the next steps. We are under the stay-at-home order, which is under the governor's executive order, which we have learned a lot about last week. That is through the end of Friday, May the 8th. So we are hopeful that he will lift that order at the end of Friday and move us into phase 1 of reopening, which will be in effect on Saturday. I've pulled this information from the governor's website. You see what is pertinent to us is that parks can open subject to gathering limits. Now the governor doesn't have jurisdiction over city parks. That's your domain, but this is advice from him and his office. We have closed all of our parks. We have received some requests from a few people to open some of our parks, all of our parks, specifically the tennis courts at Davis Park and the boat landing and boat launch at Kevin Lofton Riverfront Park. I have been in consultation with our police and public works and parks and recreation staff and feel that we can safely open our parks. Certainly when the governor moves the state into phase 1, we probably could do that this week and not wait for Saturday. For the walking tracks, the large outdoor areas in our parks, that are not currently under construction, such as Stowe Park, but the other parks, again, Kevin Lofton, Linford Park, etc., Reed Park, Davis Park. So we can open those areas. We can open the playing fields subject to the social distancing requirements. So if you can play tennis, for example, at Davis Park using social distancing, which seems reasonable, then you should be able to do that. You could probably play some pickup soccer and have social distancing. Basketball is going to be a little bit trickier because you're generally in closer contact with each other in basketball, and you're also sharing the same surface by the ball itself. You're not hitting it with a racket or kicking it with your shoe or cleats. So basketball may be a little bit tricky, but we do feel like we can safely open up our parks. What we don't want to do is open up our playgrounds or our restroom buildings. You will see in the next slide, once this is based on the governor's plan. So once the state has met all of the metrics for moving through phase one, he will move us into phase two, which lifts other restrictions. And under phase two, he would recommend opening public playgrounds. So only when the state health agencies tell us that it's safe to open public playgrounds would we do so. So I think that we can be consistent with some of our other cities within Gaston County as well as Gaston County itself. I did notice that Mecklenburg County has opened some of its parks. One of my big concerns with us opening our parks prior to Mecklenburg County is that our parks are closest to Mecklenburg County than any other parks within Gaston County and other surrounding counties. And if our parks are open and Mecklenburg County's parks are closed and it's 75 degrees on a Saturday, there's nothing stopping Mecklenburg County residents from coming into Belmont and using our parks because they're public parks, which we would normally welcome them to do that and to spend their money while they're here. But Mecklenburg County has a much higher rate of coronavirus, COVID-19, than Gaston County. So I would be leery of opening up for Mecklenburg County residents to come to our parks. But I feel like we're in good enough shape that we can proceed with the phase one reopening of our parks. Again, for everything except for playgrounds and restroom buildings. So if the council wants to discuss that, we can certainly do that. And the mayor can amend our emergency order to reflect that, but I want to make sure that everybody's on board with it. We will order new signs to make sure that people know that the parks themselves are open except for playgrounds and restroom facilities. And of course, our parks maintenance staff will ensure that our parks are kept clean as best we can. We'll encourage people, obviously, to maintain their social distance, to maintain sanitary practices, washing hands, and bringing hand sanitizer to the parks. Well, we feel like we're in good enough shape to do that at this point.
Hey, Adrian, what would you do? Publicize that on our website if that's the choice we make?
Yes, and we'll certainly respond to the people that have contacted us, and we will get the word out through our city clerk, public information officer to get the word out.
Okay, well, I'm fine with that.
Are there specific guidelines that are published out there by a health organization as far as tennis courts and walking trails and stuff go that we can share or follow or encourage folks to follow?
Yes, I think Carrie Roberts indicated that. Yeah.
She mentioned something about that with the USTA or the
Right.
tennis organization. Yeah.
She did.
Yeah, so there's guidance out there we can follow and promote.
Yeah, I think
Mecklenburg County's doing too.
Yeah, I think if I'm supportive of it. I think at this time, and I think it'd be smart to have the signs ready to be at the parks that kind of indicate what you can use and what you can't use before you make the announcement. And also, just one idea. It's up to you guys, but just like you show up to a house that's for sale, they have those little inserts with the flyers. Actually, that might cause more of a problem.
Yeah, we don't want them touching everything.
But if there's a way to have like a poster board or something, maybe just like the size of a real estate site, encouraging certain behaviors in different environments. I think that would be good too, because some folks might not even know what they should be doing versus what they shouldn't be doing in certain atmospheres. Like I wouldn't know what to do on a tennis court different, but I don't play tennis, so just an idea of trying to get that guidance out on the front end of this, as opposed to try and educate people along the process.
Well, we can say certainly. I mean, from what I've seen about a lot of these reopening orders. When they've been issued, and this is true for the shuttering orders as well. If we agree to this, it doesn't mean that as of 9 o'clock tonight, all parks are open. Let's all go down there. I mean, we can say parks are open as of whenever 9 o'clock Wednesday morning or something to sort of build in some lead time to get everything ready. So I think that would be an option.
Okay.
Good idea.
I will note that Stowe Park is still an active construction site. We are hopeful that construction will be completed by the end of May. But I would ask that we continue to keep Stowe Park closed, obviously except for the walking track around up by the middle school. But everything in the construction site will be closed. But I feel that the other parts can be open.
In the event that like a park proves to be very popular to the point where it's kind of overcrowded, do we need to consider any sort of policy around like temporary closures or things of that nature?
I think so, and that's where the mayor has the flexibility of signing the emergency order. If we find that, and I'm primarily concerned with basketball courts because those are smaller areas. You're sharing contact with the ball. You're sweaty. You're playing it right. You're in close contact. And,
unlike Wake Forest.
Right. Yes. Right. I wasn't going to say that.
At least formerly, but that's going to change now. So,
so I think that if we find that people are not obeying a social distance, and if for the basketball courts, we typically have bleachers right there for people waiting to play. If those bleachers are crowded and it's not something that people are following guidelines, and we ask them to follow guidelines and they refuse, then we can always close those back down. But I'd say at this point, let's give folks the opportunity to prove they can follow the rules. And if they can't, then we'd have to close it back down.
I agree. I think we need to proceed with caution, but at the same time, a lot of the areas around us are opening their outside restaurants, letting people eat outside and stuff like that. Some of the restaurants in Charlotte even now are letting people stand in line and do what they can do to get something to eat from a takeout standpoint. So I think it's good that we possibly look very close by after May 8th and see what we can do about opening some things up.
So, and we have ordered new signs in anticipation of reopening, and those will be ready on Friday. We anticipate, so we can have the signs out on Friday if we want to have a reopening date of Friday. That way, that gives us 3 or so days to get the word out and to get some safety measures put in place.
But I think we need to go ahead and publish on the website why we're waiting till Friday as opposed to Wednesday, if that's the case. I think signage is certainly an appropriate reason, but since we have a number of people who are really irritated just generally with everything, I think that it would at least give them something to have, or some logical reason that we're waiting till Friday.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that for the tennis courts, we could probably go ahead and open those because there's no other park component in that area.
Okay.
That's kind of separated from the rest of Davis Park. So I'd say we can open the tennis courts. But
all right.
What about the boat landing?
The boat landing, I would say the same. Now, with the boat landing comes fishermen fishing from the shore. So again, that's a social distancing issue. I think that we can probably open that now, and then the rest of the parks on Friday.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
And just to be clear, so if I want to go to Sammy's and grab some food, I can go to one of the parks and sit at a pavilion or a picnic table?
Yes. So what we're actually saying now, yes, except for you could walk up to the pavilion at the top of the hill in Stowe Park and have a little lunch. But I would encourage, if you do that, I would encourage you to wipe down our picnic table first, and then eat, and then wipe it down when you leave.
And wash
what
your
we're
hands.
seeing is, then absolutely wash your hands. We're seeing people getting takeout and having picnics on our Main Street benches.
Well, that's kind of why I was mentioning that, is that people are going to do what they do if we can find a way to make it work. So,
yeah,
I think it's a good plan. I think what you said here works. I think it's going to do some good for some people to get out and about a little bit, as long as everybody understands the rules and applies. I don't know how we're going to monitor the use of the parks and making sure that everybody's in compliance, but yeah, I'll support everything that's been said. I think we need to move forward with it.
Agreed. I think it's some of the dangers that might be present in a grocery store, say, are not as prevalent outdoors, and so I think we should be encouraging people that if they're comfortable with it, to go out and exercise in a socially distant manner, observing all appropriate safeguards. But I think that's a better thing for people to be doing than just be cooped up in their house like all the time. So I'm in favor of it as well. And just so everyone, we're all on the same page, then it's tennis courts and boat landing as of tomorrow morning, and then I would assume nobody's going to go down and start a game of tennis right now, as soon as the meeting's over. But tomorrow morning for those, and then the park, except for the restrooms and the playgrounds and whatever is under construction at Stowe Park, all of that on Friday.
Jim, unless you say tennis, anyone?
Do we need to make a motion, or is
So this will be, so the mayor has signed an emergency order. We can do one of two things. The mayor can sign a new emergency order rescinding the previous one, and we can put these provisional in there, or the city council can vote basically to override the mayor and create a new emergency order. But if there's consensus among the council, I would prefer that we write the order based on what you just said and have the mayor sign it, and we can do that in the morning.
Yeah, I don't think we can override him.
Right. Yeah. Consensus of the council, and the mayor can sign a new order rescinding the previous order.
Agreed.
Good.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right. Anything else then with the manager's report?
Yes. So the work of the city continues even in this new environment, and we would like to have a stormwater committee meeting, and the entire council makes up the stormwater committee. So I would like for you to meet next Monday, which is May the 11th, at 4 o'clock if possible, to get some background on our stormwater program and kind of get an idea of what's going on, what is required, and then certainly talk about some of the stormwater projects that may impact the budget, kind of in line with what Councilman Schrift was discussing at our last workshop. There's a certain level of work that you have to do to maintain compliance with your stormwater project or stormwater program through the federal government. But there's a lot more that you can do, but with that comes additional cost. So I'd like to have a workshop that our city engineer, a public works director, and a stormwater coordinator can just give you more information about our stormwater program and get input from you on that. So we will coordinate, or the city clerk will reach out to you, but I'd like to schedule that for next Monday, the 11th, or that will most likely be a WebEx meeting just like this. And then the following Monday will be May the 18th, and that is your regularly scheduled workshop for May. That'll be your second budget workshop, and then whatever else comes along for that. And then going along with phase 3 of the governor's plan, hopefully this will be in effect in June, but you see further increase in the number of people allowed at gatherings. I'm hopeful that your June 1st council meeting can be held in person, but we obviously don't have room in City Hall for us to have more than just a few people at the meeting, and certainly the dais is not big enough for you to all be 6 feet apart. So we have coordinated with TechWorks to hold that meeting, if allowed, at TechWorks and using the large room in the basement of TechWorks, because you can spread out and have public at that meeting if they feel comfortable. There are some overflow conference rooms where we can have additional people. There will be some items on that meeting, most likely the Essex Homes rezoning, as well as the Belmont Rowing Center site plan amendment that will end the budget hearing, and all of those could bring out the public. And so we want to have an opportunity for the public to meet in person. So we'd like to have that meeting, if we're allowed to, in person at TechWorks with the public, using social distancing, so certainly limited occupancy. And if that is the case, the resolution that you approved at the workshop on the 20th for scheduling the public hearing on the street closures associated with the River West Business Park, that's Jade Circle and Centerview Street, that resolution said that the public hearing would be held at City Hall. We would need to go back and change that resolution to say at TechWorks and via video conference. So I would ask that you approve a change to that resolution to say TechWorks instead of City Hall, and then we'll have the video conference opportunity available as well. But we are working to make sure that both at the June meeting and probably subsequent meetings, as long as this virus is around and we're concerned, we want to try to balance being able to have in-person meetings with the public to address you in person, with the need to do it in a safe manner, and City Hall just isn't big enough to do that. So we're going to try to meet at TechWorks as much as possible.
So do we need to make a motion at this time then regarding the resolution?
Yes, please.
All right. Does anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we rewrite the resolution to include TechWorks as the spot, and then I think you said the option needs to be via teleconference rather than in person. Is that correct?
So we would have the opportunity for people to call in or video in as they're doing WebEx, but also could be in person.
Right. Okay. So have I covered that, Jim, or not?
Yes, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Richard seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. The resolution is amended, or the ordinance is amended. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The resolution. So that is all that I have for the manager report.
All right. Thank you, Adrian. We move on to other business. Let's start with Ryan.
I was just going to say some of the. I'd like to hear kind of your view of the plant situation in Davis Park. Not tonight, but maybe the next time we have a retreat. I don't think the issue is on the bush or not. I think it's more about kind of how we handle those types of things and if we're doing them the way we're supposed to. So I'd like to just get feedback and talk about that as it's in line with other things that we're doing around the city.
That's in my other business part as well, so I'll address a minute or two on that.
Anything else, Ryan?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard.
Just one thing. As most of you are aware, I forwarded an email to you all, which I received from John Torbett, and his legislative aide added to that email. I shared that also previously with Adrian Parks. Since that time, I believe Adrian has been in contact with Ms. Blanks, the legislative aide, who was part of that initial email chain. I spoke to her today. There's something that she said about other municipalities helping out food banks and community organizations, and she did say that Raleigh, Wilmington, and some other municipalities have done this. They do it in the form of a grant. So you all received that email today. If you would take time and look at that email and blog, this is something I brought up when we passed the loan program for businesses. Is that a counterpart to that? I'd been inquiring whether there was something we could do to aid the BCO. I had spoken with Paul Wilkerson, and she said, you know, there is a need there. The need is expanding. So I would just request that you all take a look at that and see what you think. Maybe we can touch base on this at a later date. I did speak with Adrian about it. I don't know if he has anything that he would like to add to those comments.
We're not sure that we have statutory authority to do this. Some cities have done it through a grant. We certainly cannot make a donation to the BCO. You have to, and I would defer to Parks and maybe Jim on you have to have constitutional authority, and it's got to be a public purpose, and statutory authority to make this a grant. From what I understand from Representative Torbett's office, not clear that we have statutory authority to do this. Some cities have done it. Some cities have done it and challenged on it. So it's, if we want to do this, then it's something that we'd have to be careful in how we word it. But I would defer to Parks on the legality side of it.
Well, I'll be glad to read what I told, what I sent Richard. I think it's in that same email thread. I'm a huge supporter of the BCO and have served as its president for several years in the past. But even so, the School of Government in its post that city manager forwarded to the council several weeks ago said, quote, in North Carolina, a local government isn't even allowed to make a donation to a charitable nonprofit entity. As I explained to the council at a recent meeting, such action would violate the state constitution, and there's no statutory authority presently to do so, as your letter confirms. It sounds like there's some movement in Raleigh to change this, and I hope Mr. Torbett and others are working hard on this. Until then, it would be illegal to do this, in my opinion. And that was supported also by a letter from the legislative staff attorney in Raleigh when he said the state constitution requires all local government appropriations to be authorized by statute and for public purpose. Without specific statutory authorization, a local government would not have the authority to expend public funds for that purpose. Currently, there's no statutory authority for cities or counties to appropriate funds to a food bank. Now, it depends on how you phrase the question of what the answer is. If Raleigh and Wilmington are large cities, they perhaps have incentive grants under the economic development statute. Now, we've used the economic development statute recently, but you have to have an underlying program that would identify how it works and how the grants would be issued. You can't just write a check and give it to them. So there's also a downtown redevelopment statute that would possibly be used by some cities that were trying to redevelop their downtown. But both of those have to have specific statutory guidelines and regulations that have to be followed in order for you to be able to do it. Raleigh and Wilmington probably have that. We don't have that currently in place. If there was a council, if council wanted to try to adopt a program, then that would be something you could look into and maybe use the economic development statute as a mechanism to do that. But currently there's no statutory authority without that to do what is being suggested.
I think, go ahead, sorry.
Longer. So if there's a legal mechanism for us to do it, I certainly think that would be something that you could consider. We can certainly investigate what Raleigh and Wilmington have done. And then when the General Assembly is back in regular session, considering non-emergency legislation, we can potentially look for a local act to give Belmont authority to do a grant. So that there's some avenues that we can do if the consensus of the council is to follow those.
My suggestion would be if I read the email that Richard sent today correctly, there was at least some discussion from Mr. Torbett's legislative aide that said, well, we hope to get clarity on this when the General Assembly reconvenes. Perhaps that's something that we can wait and see what that clarity might be. It might take a month or two, but as we've indicated, the need is growing. It's not going to abate by then, so patience might be a virtue in that regard, so that we'd be in on more solid ground. We could also, Richard, if you wanted, the School of Government has a lot of resources for different programs. If you wanted to contact them and see if they had a sample of such an incentive program that we could consider and think about adopting, maybe that would be a source that we could use for such a program that Parks was talking about.
I'll do that.
It sounded like, based on the tone of the email from Representative Torbett's office, that they may have actually requested that language be put into the bill that the governor just signed. Would it be possible to find out if it's actually already in there?
Well, somebody could read the bill.
Yeah.
Not it.
Well, I think we wait for John Torbett to get back to us since the initial contact's been made, because he should certainly know if it's in there.
One would hope.
Yeah, that's not our job. That's his job.
We could do that. We could call Adrian, we could probably call his office and see, was it anything put in there? I thought it had said they were going to look at trying to put something in July. But
yeah, that's what I thought as well.
I was just going to say
end of the month, but
you guys move forward however you want, but I think we could probably spend our time and some of our resources better supporting some of the other organizations who are already doing this. So, like, you had the food drive on Main Street, and there was, tons of food given away. I know we put a lot of staff resources in that. And then I think under the governor's order, if people can't pay some of their utility bills, we can help smooth out those things. So those are the things that we can control today that might have more significant immediate impact that we might be a better use of our time than trying to get bills passed for a crisis that we're hopefully partially through already. So that would be my thought, is to reach out to these other organizations. I know my church, I think, does a backpack program. Maybe offering up city space to organize that, or having staff do help with traffic and do some in-kind services, so the nonprofits can do the nonprofit work and the public sector can kind of do our or not the public, but the government sector can do the government stuff. So that would be kind of my thoughts on the immediate future versus, it's fine if the bill gets changed, but if it doesn't, then, there are other things we could be doing now.
Anything else, Richard?
No, I'm not opposed to what Ryan said. I think it would be good for us to look into what we can do now. I think I saw somewhere that we are authorized to provide meals for the elderly. I'll look into that. I think that it's something that authority that we have now. I like the event that happened in downtown Belmont, but that helped a lot of people. I was trying to find something that was a little bit more Belmont-centric, Belmont-focused. That's why I was looking into that.
Okay. Parks, can you go on mute? We think that this feedback might be coming from you. And we were proved correct. Thank you, Seth. All right. So I think that we should continue to look at different avenues and explore all options, because I think all of us want to do what we can to continue to help But I also think we want to do it within the bounds of the law and what's appropriate. So let's, the sense would be to continue to explore such things and to follow up with Representative Torbett as necessary. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Very good. Mayor Martin, any other business from you?
Yeah, two things. I just want to reiterate the fact that the Convoy of Hope was a great thing. It helped a lot of people coming through Belmont with those 2 lanes of cars, 500-something cars. That was amazing. But also to Jeff Stanton at McDonald's, and Larry Simons, who was the mayor of Lowell at one time. He donated $1,000, and Jeff putting in $1,000. They're going to feed people today. They've already fed some people. Tomorrow, 11 to about 4 children, 12 and under, coming through the line in Belmont at McDonald's. Wednesday and Thursday, they're going to feed them coming through Mount Holly. So I wanted to let you know that. So if you had any people that you know that have kids that are 12 or under, please get them in there to get something free to eat. Doesn't cost them anything.
All right. Thank you. Martha.
I have several items. First of all, I think we are going to have to be more proactive with Waste Pro because particularly say on Dory Drive where you had all the debris left and people on bicycles dodging the debris, people dodging the debris and the people on the bicycles in cars, it was actually a dangerous situation. So whatever Adrian and David we can do to get more, I don't know what the right word is, more strict with them, but we're going to have to because this is, as I said, a dangerous situation. So you guys please talk about that. With regard to plants, we actually have gone past what the appropriate planting time is. We need to look at, and Ryan is correct, we're not fortunate to have a horticulturist on staff as do larger municipalities, say in Charlotte, but we have access to some of those same people. Quinn Hall is part of that group in Charlotte. Then we have on Keep Belmont Beautiful several people who are close to master gardener qualifications. So we need to use their resources. So we are using our staff time and our money more effectively, and that way it takes some of the heat off David and his group. The skateboard park you've heard me mention before, the designated spot is beside the police department. At the next Park and Rec meeting, I'm going to ask them to look at the sites. I still think that is the best site. It's more safe as far as what we're looking at, but there's also a spot beside the tennis courts. So I want us to look at them to look at both of those. So if you have some input and want to talk to me, not tonight, but at some point about what your feelings are as far as one site or the other, I would appreciate that. The last part is I was very displeased to see what they're doing at South Point High School. They have taken out all the plantings at the front of the school. But once again, they don't have a horticulturist either. And they have said that they're going to redo the facade and going to do what they think is appropriate. We have concerns in that area. But in talking to Jeff Ramsey, who's one of the school board members who's from our area, he's very concerned about the light situation because the buses will be coming out at Matt Amy Holmes area there and where Stowe Road intersects. And he said he thinks the light needs to be not at Harris Teeter's gas station, but there. And I explained to him that we've had conversations about that. But I think we need to have Mark Stafford and his group look at what is happening, particularly now that the retail part is being developed, and then we'll have the schools and all that as well, and reevaluate from their perspective what we should do or what they should do at this point, because it is a major concern. So that's all of my part.
All right, thank you, Martha. Mark.
I only have 2 things. I think I know we kind of talked about this in the past, but I think it'd be a good thing for us to do to eventually workshop this commercial code enforcement issue. Maybe take a second look at the ordinance that was adopted last year, and make changes based on our experience with it. Probably be a good idea to maybe do that after we get through the budget. But just kind of wanted to note that. And then also for our stormwater meeting next week, I'd be kind of interested to sort of benchmark our program against maybe some of our peers in Gaston County, just to kind of see what other municipalities are doing with their programs or what they're not doing. Because I mean, I'll be honest, I don't really know a whole lot about stormwater, so it'd be kind of nice to see kind of what other municipalities are doing with that. Because I know there's different ways, from like even calculating the fees, building different sort of mitigation devices, that sort of thing. So I'm just kind of interested to see that maybe within the context of sort of like an idiot's guide to management. So that's it.
Yeah, I might need that too. Certainly more. I'd be interested, like in cities with similar, of similar size and resources, because obviously what we do is probably not going to be what a city like Charlotte or even Gastonia is able to do. But I do think that's a good idea. The only a couple of things I had were board positions, vacant board positions. I know that's sort of gone on the back burner as a result of all of this COVID stuff. And, when we get back to it, we might even need to re-interview the people that we interviewed the first time, because it's been so long since we interviewed them. But that is something eventually I think we need to do, and probably sooner rather than later, because I know there's 2 spots open on the planning board. And if I read the planning board report correctly, the Board of Adjustments actually has a case and would like to meet. And there's a vacant spot on that board, and the attorney for that board has stated he'd like to have all 5 members before the hearing takes place. And so who knows when that's going to happen, but that's going to hold up a hearing that needs to take place for the Board of Adjustment. So, as we start getting back to normalcy, we probably need to fill some of these board positions that have now been vacant for going on several months. The last item is just Martha and I both talked to Carrie Roberts on Saturday morning, and and she mentioned it in her public comment when we explained to her sort of, well, a lot of these materials were already on hand, so they weren't any new costs or additional costs, but she did say a lot of it's the appearance. And I do think that's somewhat important in these times when a lot of people are suffering economically and out of work. And it's probably easier said than done. But, just to be mindful of the appearance of unnecessary spending or things like that, yes, there might be a perfect explanation for it. Yes, it might be with funds that were already appropriated in this year's budget. But that there is something to that in terms of giving off an appearance of wasteful spending in these tough economic times. And regardless of what the reality is, that's what people are seeing and digesting. So I just, a note of caution to be somewhat mindful of that and how things might be perceived by people, notwithstanding whatever the realities might be. Other than that, just thanks to all the staff members for sitting through our meeting electronically or digitally. So thank you for your work and for being here.
So a quick question, because we still have 3 months left or 2 months left in the fiscal year, and we still have projects that you have asked us to accomplish. And part of what I laid out to you was, since we are in an economic crisis, I would like for the city to be able to spend the money that it has, and particularly using local contractors, to help support local businesses. And I understand that everything that we do elicits a reaction from people, whether it's positive or negative. And I haven't figured out how to please all 12,500 of our residents. And frankly, I'm down to about a majority of the council. So I don't know how to continue the work of the city, implementing the direction that you gave us in this year's budget for focusing on our parks and parks maintenance. You gave us more resources this year than you've ever given us to maintain our parks. I hope you'll go through the parks because David's staff has done a good job. They certainly aren't perfect, and we're learning every day. And we have learned a huge lesson on perception recently. But I would ask that you let us do what you have charged us with doing. And if you want us to switch direction, we can do that. But just let us know that we need to just kind of wait out the next couple months.
I understand, that's why I said it was easier said than done, because I appreciate, all of that. And maybe Martha can sum it up better than I can, because we were both there. And I think we both thought it was a valid point, but I definitely understand the whole situation.
Adrian, I think that spending the money is perfectly fine. I think when you put the information out on the website about that we're reopening the parks and the tennis court and all that stuff, that's the opportune time to say, maybe not use the term frivolous spending, but just say, we've taken note that people are concerned about them, what we're doing or something like that. But this is so wonderful because we've had some time to do this. We're ready to reopen the parks, and put it a real positive spin on that and weave the rest of it in there, because people don't realize how much we've been pushing to get the park maintenance done. So the fact that we're not having events and you have the time to do it is wonderful. So can you maybe weave that into what you say about reopening the parks and maybe, as I said, put a positive spin on it?
Yes, and I hope that you'll look at Stowe Park over the next couple of weeks. And over the last several years, we've basically rebuilt Stowe Park.
Right.
And it's going to look better. And I'm not going to say better than ever because I wasn't around to see it. I don't want to step on anybody's toes and get that thread going.
Yeah, you're not old enough.
It's going to look better than it has in recent years. Yes.
But I want the train back, Adrian.
Well, there's a lot of things that I want.
Adrian, I understand what Jim was saying, and perception sometimes can be reality, but I would encourage you to go ahead and continue with our park maintenance and our park projects. We did budget the money, and we did make a commitment to go ahead and move forward with these things. We need to be mindful of perception and spending, and Martha's right. When you roll out your message, you may want to note that we have taken the opportunity of the parks being closed to do a lot of the work. So when they do reopen, they're going to be ready to roll for the most part.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any year to make some investments in the way the parks look and function and everything, I think this is probably the year to do it. I think a lot of people will probably appreciate having nice parks to go out to after being cooped up in their house for 2 months.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Well, in that case, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Martha has moved. I take that as a very eager second from Ryan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone who would not like to adjourn? None. Seeing none, we are now adjourned. I am going to turn off the recording. Thank you, everyone. We will see council and select staff in 1 week at our stormwater committee meeting. 4 o'clock Monday.
Wash your hands.
And wash your hands, yes.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you do.